So what's your fascination with bears? It seems it seems like this animal's like drawn you in,
I
and
know, I get that
yeah.
so often, and it's not a fascination with bears, it's a fascination with animals. It just so happens I've done two major projects that have bears in them, and so everyone thinks I'm the bear guy now.
My name is Genevieve. I'm a
Hi,
BFA
Genevieve.
2 in character animation.
Hi, Aaron. I'm Giovanni. I am a BFE3 in character animation. It's very nice to meet
Oh, that's
you.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm Kabir. I'm also a BFA3 in character animation.
Awesome. Yes, so I'm Aaron Blaise. I've been an animator for 38 years. I was with Disney for 21 years. I've worked on films like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King, and I directed Brother Bear. And I've got my own online art education business now where I teach animation, storyboarding, traditional art media, all kinds of different things. And I just finished a new film called Snow Bear, a short film that I created myself.
Amazing.
The first thing we wanted to ask you is just how did you get your start in the animation industry? Just tell us a little bit about your journey, where you started, and how long it took for you to like kind of grow confident into the skills that you have today.
Well, it's interesting. I never wanted to be an animator. That wasn't my intent. When I was a kid, I grew up in South Florida, out in the Everglades, and I was always chasing animals, and I've always had a love of animals, and that was always the dominant inspiration in all of my art as a kid was drawing animals and wildlife. And I loved National Geographic. Growing up, I was always reading National Geographic magazines and always had dreams of seeing different parts in the world. And I loved all of the illustrations in National Geographic. So by the time I went to art school, I enrolled in the illustration major at Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida, back in the mid 80s. And my intent was to be a National Geographic illustrator. That's what I wanted to do. But they only freelanced, I discovered. And so I started looking at other opportunities. And this was the first year this was 1987. It was the first year that Disney had decided to look outside of recruiting from CalArts and Sheridan and some of the other. Well, that was pretty much it in North America back then, as far as who was teaching animation. And so they wanted to see if they could recruit young people that could draw and see if they could teach them animation. And so I was in that first internship. They came and I thought, wow, that sounds like an interesting opportunity. I really had never thought about animation. And so I submitted a portfolio and I was accepted. And there was 8 of us from across the country that were accepted. And I went into this intern program. It was only 6 weeks. This was in 1988, the summer of 1988. And I was very, very lucky. They had each intern was paired up with a mentor. And my mentor was Glenn Keane. And so I met with Glenn and sat in his office. I knew nothing about him. I knew nothing about animation. I really went in cold. And he, as only Glenn Keane can, really inspired me. He was just finishing up Oliver and Company and just getting started on The Little Mermaid. And I was sitting in his office as he was doing some thumbnails for a shot from The Little Mermaid in Part of Your World song. And we were talking about, he was explaining to me about all the possibilities of animation. And, he had a similar background in that he came at it from a painter, illustrator type point of view, and then kind of fell into it at CalArts. And so he and I kind of had this commonality. And he's just so inspiring. And within 10 minutes of sitting in his office and listening to Glenn, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. That, I could take these, my love of animal drawing and then bring life, real life to them, not just paintings, but I could really bring them to life. That to me was super intriguing and super inspiring. And I was hooked. And so I finished that internship after 6 weeks. and I was hired. They hired me, and they were opening a new animation studio in Orlando, Florida, and I was from Florida. So I went back to school and I finished my last year at school. And then I started April 17th of 1989 at the new animation studio in Orlando, Florida. And that's where I got my start. I started out as an assistant animator. And over the next year, I kind of worked my way up through the ranks. And after about a year and a half, I became an animator. And, I wasn't great. But I learned, and one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had was when we were making Beauty and the Beast. Glenn asked me if I wanted to work with him on the Beast crew. And so I was one of the animators of the Beast. And one of the wonderful things about Glenn Keane is just how incredibly generous he is with the work that he gives out, especially to young kind of aspiring animators. He gave me shots in Beauty and the Beast that really defined my career. Allowed me to create a really wonderful reel. One of the best sequences he gave me to animate was the scene where Belle is trying to bandage Beast's arm, and he's screaming in pain, and they're yelling back and forth in front of the fireplace. And that hurt, and you shouldn't have been in the West Wing, and you shouldn't have lost your temper, and all that kind of stuff, all that back and forth that they did. I animated all of that with Mark Henn doing Belle, and I learned an incredible amount animating that sequence, and it really defined my career. And to this day, it's still one of my favorite sequences that I've ever animated, and all because of Glenn and his generosity. So that's where I got my start, and that's how I kind of continued moving forward.
Amazing. Like, wow, just super, yeah. I mean that also kind of went over the second question we were going to ask you, and it was like, just what was it like working on these features at Disney with other animators and stuff that you learned?
Yeah.
Obviously, Glenn, probably the biggest influence. Are there
Glenn
any
was a
other
huge
animators
influence on me? Yes. So Mark Henn was an incredibly big influence on me. Mark actually worked at the Florida studio. Glenn worked in the California studio at the time it was in Glendale off of Flower Street. But I was working with Mark quite a bit. And actually Mark and I worked together, from film to film to film. So he did Belle and I did Beast and Beauty and the Beast. And Aladdin, I was given Raja, the tiger. It was a small role, but it was my own character. So I created Raja and then animated Raja through the film, and Mark did Belle. So we were always working together. And then we went on to The Lion King, where I created young Nala, and Mark created Simba, young Simba. And so we worked together on that. And so, and then Mulan, we worked together. I did Yao and the Ancestors, and he did Mulan. And we just worked from film to film to film. And so I learned an incredible amount from Mark Henn. And then along the way, there's just so many people that worked at the studio that I just kind of drew, no pun intended, that I drew from. It's the Andreas Dejas and the James Baxters and all these wonderful animators that, were creating some beautiful work at the time. And I was really inspired by it. And so you learn from them as well. And I was going back and forth between the studios. And so, getting to know Andreas, getting to know James, and all the other wonderful Sandro Cluso and, really amazing animators that just blew my mind. And you can't help but learn from them. And so, there is that. And then the films themselves, I really, every film has a special memory, whether it's The Lion King or Aladdin or, Brother Bear, which I got to direct. Every single film is a new piece of growth in my career. So it was really great in that sense.
Awesome. Your experience of being in the industry and seeing it evolve from traditional to digital, how was that experience for you, having to migrate from, working with 2D pencil and paper to digital?
Yeah, I fought it and fought it and fought it. I was scared of it. I didn't think I had the brains to work the technology. I was scared of it, and I refused to stop animating on paper for a long time. And even after I left Disney, I still hadn't worked on paper. I mean, it still hadn't worked digitally, animation wise. Before I left Disney, I was starting to, dabble my fingers in digital illustration and digital visual development. I was working in Photoshop, and I was doing quite a bit of stuff there, and I was getting the hang of it. And then after I left Disney, I was hired to do a commercial for a British department store. And the name of the commercial was called The Bear and the Hare. And it was this animation of this bear character and hare character a Christmas campaign that they were doing. And I animated all of that on paper, but half the crew that I was working with, they were animating digitally, on the Cintiq. They were using Toon Boom. And I was really fascinated by it. And a couple of the guys, when we wrapped on everything, came up to me and said, you'd really dig TVPaint. I bet you would really like TVPaint. And so I looked it up and I thought it was interesting. So I bought it and I started working with it. I have a big Wacom Cintiq and I got hooked on it. I loved it. And so that was 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And I've been using it ever since. And that's what I created Snow Bear with, was all TVPaint. But it was funny because I was really scared of it. And I remember way back when I was working on Mulan, or actually even before Mulan, I think it was The Lion King. And I had a boss that said, Aaron, in about 10 years, you guys are going to be drawing on a computer monitor. You're going to be drawing right on the monitor. And I thought he was crazy. I said, there's no way. This is even before Toy Story came out. And I just couldn't, I couldn't understand. I couldn't figure out how the heck are you going to draw on a TV screen? That doesn't make any sense. And, of course, here we are 25 years later, 30 years later, and that's all we do. So it's pretty crazy.
You've been an animator and you've been teaching for a very long time. And I guess I wanted to ask you, what is just some kind of key piece of advice that you would give to any aspiring animator who wanted to go into the craft, or someone who's learning and still trying to grow? What is some kind of advice that you would give?
Well, the biggest thing is to continue to learn and grow. One of the biggest things that I see, and I have people asking me, I have kids in school young people in school, you're not kids. To me, you are, but no. But they haven't even graduated yet, and they say, how do I become a director? And I said, well, you've got a big journey between what you're doing now as a student to becoming a director. And so for me, the biggest piece of advice is patience. You guys are growing up in a world where you're used to instant access to, knowledge, music, instant stardom, and a lot of cases with online viral things going crazy, and animation and creativity. Those are things that can't be created instantly, especially, as an artist, you have to develop it over years. And it's like creating wine, it just takes time. It takes repetition, in the same way that you want to become a great musician or you want to be a great soccer player, you have to practice, you have to do it over years, and over that time you develop. And so you have to be patient. And, I'm 57 years old. I'm still animating. I've been animating almost 40 years, and I'm still learning, and I'm still getting better, and I'm still trying to hone that art, and you'll be doing it, until the end of your days. And that's the beauty of an artistic career, is that there's always something new to learn and to express and to do. And so it's keeping that patience and embracing that idea. Embrace the idea that this is a lifelong journey that you're embarking on. And it's beautiful, it's rich, and it's going to be fun, but not everything happens overnight. And so you just have to, and the other thing too is, so many young people start looking now, especially with social media, they see so-and-so creating these beautiful images or these beautiful pieces of animation. And it's like, oh, I should be doing that, or why aren't I that good? You know, compare yourself to yourself and stay focused on that, because you can really get down on yourself. You can get sidetracked. You can be inspired by other people. You can be inspired by other work. But don't get hung up on that, because that'll take you down a bad road. And so be patient and compare yourself to yourself.
Thank you
That's
so
my
much,
advice.
Aaron. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is more of a, I guess, fun question. So, what's your fascination with bears? It seems
You know,
like
it's funny.
it seems like this animal's like drawn you in,
I
and
know, I get that
Yeah.
so often, and it's not a fascination with bears, it's a fascination with animals. It just so happens I've done two major projects that have bears in them, and so everyone thinks I'm the bear guy now. And it's interesting because I love all kinds of, I love animating animals in general. Yeah, it's with Snow Bear, with Brother Bear, Disney was already developing a bear movie. That's where that came from. And it was a film called Bears, and there was nobody working on it. They had done some development on it, but it was sitting on the shelf. And so when I found out about it, me being the animal guy, I wanted to be, at that time, I still wanted to be a wildlife artist. So the opportunity to design bear characters and maybe animate some bears, I thought was really exciting. So I went to the heads of the studio and I said, hey, I want to work on this film. And I just kept bugging them to the point where they said, well, you want to direct it? And so I said, oh, okay. And so that's how I ended up directing Brother Bear. And that's how I ended up doing Bears there. And then with Snow Bear, going back to that bear commercial, the Bear and the Hare, that one, because I did Brother Bear, they came to me and said, hey, we've got this commercial that has bears in it. Can you direct the commercial because you did Brother Bear? And I said, okay, I'll do that. And then with Snow Bear, that one was just coincidental. I wanted to do a very simple film that I could animate all myself.
Yeah.
And I wanted a simple environment. And so I thought, oh, the Arctic, it's just ice and snow. I can do that. And, that was ignorant of me, but because it was anything but simple. And I thought, what's the most iconic character, lonely character, because I wanted to tell a story of loneliness in the Arctic. And it was a polar bear. So I ended up doing a polar bear. So, but, I animate all kinds of animals. But yeah, it's just funny how bears just keep making their way into my work.
Yeah. Maybe this is like asking about like a favorite child, but do you have a favorite animal? Do you have any animal that's like, oh, I just love?
Yeah, I love big animals. I love, when I started, let me back up. I started out, I was fascinated with birds. Growing up in Florida, we have an incredible amount of bird life here. Migratory birds come in and out because of where we're located on the globe. And I love wading birds and, water and all that kind of stuff. And so I was always fascinated with birds. I love flight. I was an amateur pilot, and I'd fly all over the place. And I love creating flights. And so birds have always fascinated me. So that was always my first love, was drawing and animating birds. I love the mechanics of flight and actually animating that. I think it's really cool. But then, branching out from that, as I opened up my mind to other wildlife as I grew older. I've been to Alaska, I've been to Nepal, I've been to Africa, I've been all over, South America, I've been all over the world. And I love big animals, elephants and bears, big cats, lions and jaguars and leopards and rhinos, anything really big. They're just fun to draw. They're great shapes. They have wonderful weight. The physiology and the way that they're built to carry that weight, I think is interesting from an animator standpoint. They're just fun. Yeah. So, big dramatic animals are fun for me, but I'm not above, drawing mice and insects either. So I love it all.
Awesome.
I mean, you kind of already dived into this, but how was it working on Snow Bear and doing it by yourself? And what were the challenges of making a short film?
Yeah, that's a good question. So many people avoid making their own film because I think they see the mountain of work that it is, and they don't think they can do it. And they think it's so drilled into our brains from a career standpoint that it takes a studio to make a film. And it really doesn't, especially nowadays with all the equipment that we have. And like I said, I went into Snow Bear with the intent of making my own film. And so I planned it in a way that one person could do it. Like I said, it was one character in, at the time, what I thought was a simple environment. Now, my background from illustration going into animation helped me because I was a painter first. I was a painter before I became an animator. So creating the backgrounds was really a joy for me, and that was a lot of the fun of creating the film was, I got to paint and create layout and design the staging and actually paint the backgrounds, and then I would go and animate, and then I'd go back and, so I was able to go back and forth and do those things. Now, the intent was to do about a 6-minute short. It turned out to be twice that long. And so how do you get something like that done, even though it's short, doing it with one person? And I wanted it to be full animation. I wanted ones and twos, and that's just a mountain of work. So I made sure that I was very regimented. I set up the schedule, I set up quotas for myself, and I set an end date, and I just started working. And I was lucky enough to have a crew in my company that helped me stay on schedule. My business partner ran our business while I went and drew every day. And one of the things I wanted to do was, creating shorts, that's a hard business to be in as far as how do you create any kind of revenue from a short. It's not a feature. You don't, with a feature, you can release it, you create revenue through ticket sales, and you make money that way. Shorts don't work that way. And so, but we found other ways of doing it. The short, I wanted to create a course actually on how to create an animated short. So that was the reason I started making it. So there was that. But then I thought, rather than keep it secret in the way that Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, they keep all of that secret till they release the movie and then everyone gets to see it. I thought, why don't I live stream the entire process and build an audience as I make the film? And so that when the film comes out, there's already a group of people out there, an audience that will be anticipating it and want to see it. So that's what I did. And I spent 2.5 years actually making it. And through that process, I live streamed it twice a day. Twice a week. On every Tuesday and every Thursday, you could tune in and at 10 a.m. And I might be doing a background. I might be doing rough animation. I might be doing cleanup. I might be doing whatever. And you could tune in and ask me questions, and I would sit and draw, and I did that for 2.5 years. I've got over 400 hours of that recorded, and it was cool because when the film was finally finished, and as we've been showing it around the world, we've got people that want to see it because they were there with me the whole time, and no matter where I am in the world. So that's pretty cool. So that's one of the things I did, but the biggest thing was just really just doing it. It really just comes down to you schedule it out and then you do it, and you'll be amazed, given the right amount of time and given the right determination, what you can do. You don't need a huge studio. You don't need all of the, you don't need, $10 million. You can just go in and you can start doing it. You just got to do it. And that's one of the biggest things I learned is just sit down and do it.
Just so inspiring. I don't know. It's just like, I think we all kind of have that like idea of like, oh my gosh, like when it comes to just making your own film, of just how monumental of a task it is. So it's just really inspiring to see the work that you've made and you've produced, and seeing it go out and win all these awesome awards. It's just like it's just super inspiring. I don't know. I think it's really cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. What is kind of your thoughts and your perspective on like the future of this industry and animation, and where you think like the craft is going to go,
right.
With the evolution of like technology and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But also like, what are you excited about in a way as well?
Yeah. I'm excited about filmmaking in general, first of all. So the elephant in the room is AI, right? Everyone wants to know about AI. Everyone wants to know about how is that going to affect my job? How is it going to affect the industry? There's two ways of looking at AI. There's is AI going to affect you as an artist in the way that you express yourself? And I got some thoughts on that. And then there's that. And then is AI going to affect my job prospect in this industry that I want to work on? And those are two separate things. And I'll start with the latter first. So is AI going to affect job prospects for students like you that want to be animators in the industry? Yes, it's going to affect it. AI is not going to go away. And as people that want to go into the entertainment industry, people are going to have to start to rethink how they fit into that industry, I think. I don't understand it yet. I don't understand how. And I think a lot of people don't know yet. I think it's a big open, it's still determined, it's still defining itself, right? Right now, there's a lot of pushback against AI and AI filmmaking, but there's also a lot of companies that are making AI films. And when one comes out and eventually one becomes successful, you're gonna see, it's gonna become another tool in the toolbox. As an animator, this is my thing, because I post a lot of stuff on social media. I'm sure you guys follow a lot of stuff I do on social media, and I constantly get people, that make ignorant comments, and ignorant in the sense that they just don't know what they don't know, and that being, hey, AI is going to be able to do that in 6 months a lot faster and a lot better than what you're doing right now, and I say I know that, but when cameras came along, when photography came along, painters didn't stop painting. And it's going to be, when CG came along, yes, CG, when Toy Story came out, it definitely affected 2D animation and that industry, but it didn't stop 2D animation from being done, right? It's going to be the same thing with AI. So AI comes along. I don't make animation, I don't make images because of the finished product. And what I mean by that is I'm an artist, like you guys are artists. I love the act of creating. For me, the end product is the bonus. The real joy is the process of making that. And so I'm going to continue in my own world to make hand-drawn animated films. And it might take me 3 years to make a film, and Joe Blow over here might use AI and do it in 6 weeks. That doesn't affect me at all. I'm still gonna make my 3-year film, and I'll put it out there and people will watch it and people will enjoy it. And that's how I'm gonna continue to make films. And what's interesting, because you asked about, some more about the future, where I think it's going to go. I'm seeing a really big shift in the last several years of young people going to school and wanting to learn 2D animation. I'm seeing that a lot. I think we're going to see, as technology and AI push and push and push and develop and become more integrated, I think we're also going to see a shift toward hand-drawn, human-created art. I think you're going to see a hunger for that, and it's going to become more appreciated because AI is taking hold. I think we're going to see an interesting trend. It's just and I could be wrong, but I think we're going to start to see that. I think people are going to, they're going to get tired of, in the same way that I think people are getting tired of the same kind of look in CG films from, when Spider-Verse came out, it really kind of shook things up. It's a new way to do CG and mixing 2D and all these things. And all of a sudden it was a phenomenon, right? And I think we're going to start to see things with 2D in the same way. And then also, you've got these wonderful ways of work getting seen that we never had 30 years ago with YouTube and all these wonderful, ways of getting, TikTok and these social media platforms where you can play short films. You can, with streaming platforms, they're taking stuff. So from a distribution standpoint, we've never lived in a better time to get work out there. So as independent artists and filmmakers, it's a super exciting time because we've never had the tools and the opportunities even with AI that we have now, 20 years ago, I could have never made Snow Bear and gotten it out in the way that I have. So that gave me some really great opportunity just through technology.
Totally.
So I think AI obviously is going to come along. It's going to affect a lot of different things. But if you're really an artist that loves to create, then you're going to continue to do that, because that's why we do what we do. We love the process of creating. So just keep doing that. And like I said, when I was talking earlier about, what kind of advice would I give young artists, that idea of don't worry about that lane or that lane. If you love the lane that you're in, keep doing what you're doing. And that passion and that love people will see that, and they'll want to see what you're doing. And so just keep doing it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very well said.
Very well said.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty much all the questions we had for you. The last thing we just wanted to ask is do you have any questions for us just about, as students pursuing animation, anything you're
I think I wanted to kind of reverse that question back to you guys, because I've had young people in tears, when I go out and give talks, especially, in some of these, seminars that I go to. I have kids that are young people going to school, with the intent of working for a studio, and they're so incredibly fearful of what new technology is going to do to the prospects of them getting a job. And my answer to them is what I've just been saying, is just, keep doing what you're doing, because you will find a way in there. And I'm curious to see, what you guys what your attitudes are toward all of that.
Yeah. I think I agree with what you're saying in terms of especially the move to 2D products not 2D products, 2D productions, as this market gets saturated with AI films and things like that. I think it's going to be kind of similar to what happened to stop motion, where it used to be tons of the special effects, Jason the Argonauts, King Kong, all done with stop motion, and then CG came along. But now when something comes out that's stop motion, it's like a special occasion, and it's really high quality. I mean, if you look at King Kong versus anything that Leica or Aardman are doing now, it's just the quality of the innovation and technological achievements. So I think that's kind of, especially with, I really want to be a 2D animator. I think that's kind of what's going to happen. There's not going to be as many projects, but the ones that come out are little gems that had to be forged in a mountainside or something.
Yeah. And you can create your own lane. You can create, if there's not a project out there, create your own project, create your own demand,
Yeah, I completely agree. It's especially in this day and age, I feel like we're seeing so much of indie studios and people just going out and reading their whole thing, with, Glitch Productions, which being a studio that's creating a lot of stuff that is super inspiring to see, because it's their work is getting viewership that's beyond what some places are getting, and they're completely just self, doing everything on YouTube, and it's really inspiring to see. And I feel I don't know, I completely agree with what you said and what Kabir was talking about, where it's I think there's always going to be as AI evolves, it's there's always going to be that hunger for things like 2D animation. I feel there's always going to be that place for it. There's always going to be an audience of people who want to see it, and there's always going to be people who want to do it. And I think that ultimately is going to take it,
I think human created original art is going to become even more valuable.
No, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So
it's really interesting. I do a lot of stuff. I started kind of finding my own lanes on social media, especially TikTok and Instagram, where I'm doing a lot of paper animation. I'm just, I'm really going back old school. I'm just doing paper animation, especially if I do a live stream. If I do a live stream on TikTok and I'm doing it on paper, which turns out to be the most popular thing, I'll end up with, 10, 15,000 people watching all at once. And they're completely fascinated by what I'm doing, to the point you're why are you flipping the paper? because that technology, the craft of creating paper animation has been completely lost on a generation. It's not that knowledge doesn't exist in the commonality of the public in the way that it used to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, that's the only way animation was done was on paper. So everybody knew why you flipped the paper. But now, I get people that they just don't understand. And so that's really cool. And so this fascination of animating on paper and creating life in these really primitive ways, for lack of a better way of explaining it, I think it's like magic. You're a wizard. And so, people are drawn to that. It's pretty cool.
Like the people who think like AI is just gonna they're gonna take over. It's like, that's just a crazy thing. And I think,
well, AI is gonna infiltrate every aspect of our lives. It's art, it's medicine, it's the way we produce food. Everything, right? Writing. It's going to be there for everything, and a lot of it can solve the problems of the world. There's wonderful things about AI. There's a lot of things that they have to solve that are horrible about AI, that will eventually get solved. It's we keep looking in the 5-year window. That's what we keep getting hung up on. When you project yourself out 25 years or 50 years, you can't even imagine where society's going to be if it doesn't destroy the world first. But it could go, it could be the world of Star Trek. All war can be solved, and all, who knows? We might live in a utopian society, but it's going to infiltrate everything. But what's interesting, I always joke about the Star Trek society, because even in that world, this fictional world that they've created, the idea of human created stuff is really important in that world as well. And so it's going to be interesting. The next in your lifetime, you guys are going to go through you're going to see some incredible things.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for answering our questions that we had for you and asking us your personal take.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. This has been a real pleasure, and good luck with school.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And your careers and everything you're going to be doing. I'm excited for you. It's going to be a really crazy, fun ride for you.
Yeah.
And it has been for me. Yeah.
And again, congrats on Snow Bear. We're all very happy to see that. And thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
It was an
you.
honor, Aaron.